Okay, September 24th, 2019, George Webb in Fernald. Fernald, as you can see, the Fernald experience. This is the ex-uranium plant here, 11 families, 1,000 acres about. That's where currently in the Fernald experience here is a nature preserve, as you can see. That's where it's stored right there in those mounds, thanks to the great help here at the Department of Energy for providing this. And this is a little bit of the museum here talking about the nature of the plant starting in 1952. You can see it was the Cold War. That was the reason for producing this highly enriched uranium here. You can see the sort of the time period when the plant was originally built. And here's a little bit of the workers area here, and here is where you're going to get the uranium. The uranium's coming in here in these drums, and then it's going to be manufactured in these fuel cores right here. And just to give you a little bit of a sense of working back here, there's the plants here.
For nearly 4 decades, men and women worked at Fernald to produce high-quality uranium metal products for the nation's defense programs. It was a complicated process, requiring many experiments, many people and resources, and many steps. There were 10 main plants, divided between chemical and metal operations, plus many supporting buildings and structures. These were clustered at the center of Fernald's 1,050-acre site. At the peak of production in the mid-1950s to the early 60s, nearly 3,000 dedicated people were needed to get the job done. Discovered the fascinating transformations of material that happened.
And I'll very quickly kind of go to the graphic here and show that there's an ability to look at all the different plants here and kind of go interactively through here. And I'll play plant 6, which is interesting, which is where the material is actually machined.
Plant 6, the metals fabrication plant, was where the processing of uranium was completed. Ingots were rolled out into billets, machined, inspected, and shipped off-site. Glenn Price remembers how busy the metals fabrication plant was.
They stressed production above everything else. There was, in the plant 6, there were bar grills running, there were sun strands running, there were drill presses running.
The plant was divided between a rolling mill side and a machining side. Raymond Wolf explains the rolling mill.
They were then transported to plant 6 and put into a salt bath and heated for the night.
So obviously you're going to have an emphasis on creating a nuclear reactor so that then you can create a secondary product called plutonium, or the other designs. We won't go into all those other designs. But you can see here some of the laboratory equipment that was used in the state of the art. Obviously there was an implosion at plant 7. Excitement there. So, and then you can look and see when the plant's decommissioned. Now, the interesting thing about this plant
President Reagan tried to dispel concerns.
This, of course, is the Mueller raid here that we're talking about.
The Energy Department today settled a lawsuit brought by the former workers at the Fernald nuclear weapons plant near Cincinnati. The employees claim that radioactive hazards at work led to increased cancer rates.
Neighbors of a federal uranium processing plant in Fernald, Ohio, said today they would continue to pursue a lawsuit against the plant despite an historic agreement yesterday that would allow the state of Ohio to regulate a federal cleanup. Neighbors of a federal uranium processing plant in Fernald, Ohio, said today they would continue to pursue a lawsuit against the plant in Fernald, Ohio against the plant that would allow the state of Ohio.
More safety trouble in the nation's nuclear facilities.
Notice the Iran-Contra right before that.
Radioactive leaks at a federal nuclear fuel plant in Ohio. David Martin reports on accusations that instead of a cleanup, there was a cover-up.
Residents of Fernald, Ohio have long claimed this plant, which turns out uranium used in the production of nuclear weapons, emitted massive amounts of radioactive contamination.
The federal government is ready to start a major investigation at the Fernald uranium processing plant, and we are told it will center on the possibility of a cover-up of environmental crimes. Now, that could lead to serious criminal charges.
The Energy Department today settled a lawsuit brought by the former
New charges tonight that the Fernald uranium plant is no safer under new management than it was under the old.
And so there you have it, the cacophony of news. And where that gets into our story is the same company that seems to be taking over all these plants. In our story, we'll walk out here so you can see some of the grounds now. The same plant, the same company that takes over a lot of these technologies for making these rods and so forth is Tenex. Tenex, our friends in Russia. So about 1995, about the time that the Department of Energy is switching over with Bill Clinton, is about the same time the Russians are developing the technology that looks a lot like this Fernald plant did. Bob Mueller now take down this plant. Did he take down the plant out in Rocky Flats in order to exfiltrate that technology? Would you have some Z Society kids? Remember, not me saying that the Z Society kids would go into places like this and exfiltrate the technology to North Korea, China, Libya, Iran, Iraq. It's Otto Warmbier saying that in front of a lot of journalists in North Korea saying, hey, we're exfiltrating the technology. That's what we were supposed to do. They were doing it through a church. If you remember, they were getting the money, using the money, then rinsing it through the Democratic National Committee to buy local county, opening county offices with the money. So we'll see how this all works out, but that's the story here in Fernald, the Visitors Preserve.